So today we're going to be talking about the economy, politics, race, and colorism. Okay. So I am honored to be here today with Mr. Marlon Weems. Okay. You all know him, the publisher of the Journeyman publications. So, sir, you want to introduce yourselves and tell us um, your journey and how you made it to
Sure.
Substack.
So, I have been asked on occasion because I know the name of my newsletter is a little unusual, but people who follow sports probably have heard the term journeyman. And what it refers to is an athlete that has been around the league on different teams and had some success, because they're either in the NFL or the NBA or whatever. So they're at the high level. However, they never got a Super Bowl ring, or they never, got the NBA championship ring. And so when I was deciding what to call this, I had several different names. And I think I was watching a football game or something, and I heard them refer to a guy as a journeyman. And so I felt like that really lined up with my particular situation because I started off as one of the first African Americans in finance in Arkansas. So we're talking about the early 80s. And then I was actually kind of fortunate. I landed in Arkansas still at a big um, reputable firm that's still around. And that's really where I kind of learned the business. And so, fast forward a few years later, I started my own firm in Arkansas, which was the first Black-owned firm in the state of Arkansas. And then a few years after that, and if you want to keep with the sports comparison, I went to the big show. I cashed out of my firm I went to Wall Street. And so I worked on Wall Street for 13 years and ultimately ended up actually running a trading operation, a couple of different places. And so at that time, I think there might have been on the entire street, maybe two or three other people besides me that were running trading desks. But most of them were with like big, Legg Mason and these big mutual funds and so forth. I was on the other side of the fence as I sold, those were my clients. So T. Rowe Price, State of New York, those were my clients. And so I left New York in 2012, moved to North Carolina. Um, and ultimately ended up being sort of a subject matter expert on the capital markets. So I would write research, big picture stuff like technology, what's going on, market structure, and I won't bore your audience with all of that minutia, but that ultimately led to me starting this newsletter, which is about 5 years ago. And I've been on Substack all about that whole length of time. So I was on Substack before there was notes. So I've kind of experienced the whole evolution.
That's amazing. That word journeyman is also a term in construction because I worked for the Corps of
Exactly, true.
Engineers 39 years. So you get to the status of journeyman, you have made it. Okay. And so you have people underneath you that you are mentoring and you're coaching and bringing them along because you have, the newbies, they have to be taught
Apprentices,
trade.
yeah.
Apprentices. Thank you. So for every journeyman, he might have 5 or 6 apprentices underneath him. It's a code. It tells you, Department of Labor, it tells you what the percentage is of apprentices versus journeymen. Okay. So you get the level of quality that is required. Okay. So we have to give people feedback and we have to to show people the ropes. So we can pass the baton on to them. They become a journeyman, okay, one day once they reach that level of quality excellence. Okay.
Hmm.
So yes, yes. So
So I
I
think
respect it.
in my writing, I guess in a sense, I try to do that because what you can you can get research on stocks and different things like that. I don't really focus on that so much as big picture. What does this mean, kind of thing, and I try to write in a way. If you which by the way, everything I write is available for free. I don't really paywall stuff because to me it defeats the purpose, right? Well, for
Yes.
one thing, when I look at it like this, how do you know if my um, information is useful if you have to pay before you can see it? That's one thing, right? So to me, it's counterintuitive. And secondly, so someone, EG, I believe, is asking if I write about macroeconomics. I don't know if how you might categorize it, but I would say this. So, for example, I look at uh, unemployment, BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistic information, and what I try to do is say, okay, yeah, I know what the number is that they say on Bloomberg, on TV, or whatever, but what does that really mean? What does that?
Mm.
So when we say that the economy is doing great, or the better yet, the stock market is doing great, does that mean you're doing great? Maybe not, probably not. And so I actually, about a month ago, I wrote a piece, and the title of it was "The Stock Market Ain't the Economy," because it's not. It's a whole different. Um, it's just a whole different metric. And in fact, if you think about it, if you took the total value of the stock market, which is supposed to represent the the United States, the economy, or however you want to look at it, the value of the stock market is greater than the United States GDP by a
Mm.
lot. So, those are kind of things I look at because most people don't really think about that, right? They just, oh, the stock market's up, and it's a bigger picture. So just not to belabor it, but that's kind of how I do it. And I try to one of the things I try to do is I might start off telling a personal story about something, that I experienced when I was working on Wall Street. It might even be something, when I was growing up, but I try to tie it in, to give a person a sort of a picture that everyday person could understand and not just throw a bunch of numbers.
Yeah. So, like myself, I'm a visual person. You can talk these numbers all day, and I'm not going to understand what you're saying until I see it. Okay. So, since we keep talking about Wall Street, talk to me about what happened in Oklahoma. You know, to with Black Wall Street.
Oh,
Because you had your own.
mm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is, I think, a story most people know is that, and it's interesting to me because a lot of times you hear people um, make what I consider either an ill-informed or kind of low-key racist comment, like, well, if black people would just, you know, work harder or pull themselves up or do this, you see, this, that, and the other. And history tells us that every time black people do this, and it has happened a lot, um, white folks get mad and they come in and pretty much destroy whatever we build. So we're talking about, let's just use Black Wall Street as an example, but there's certainly other examples. Black Wall Street, as I understand it, and we're talking about, I believe was it the Greenwood area of right outside of Tulsa, sort of like a black enclave, and they had, doctors, lawyers, movie theaters, everything that you might imagine in regular society, but it was for black folks. And the reason they did that was because, black people, this is in the early 20s, if my memory serves. Black people were excluded from interacting and enjoying these things with white folks. So they built their own. And, of course, as I said earlier, um, white folks, there's always some catalyst. Some black kid said something to a white woman, and that was the excuse to burn down the whole town. And that actually something similar happened in Arkansas, which is where I'm from. And I wrote about this a few years ago. You're probably familiar with the Red Summer in the early 1900s. This is after World War One. You had all these black soldiers coming back from, from fighting in overseas, and even though they have represented the United States, they come back to the same Jim Crow that they left when they when they got drafted, right? So these
Right.
guys come back, and and by the way, this we're not talking about in the South necessarily. This is all over the country, up in Chicago, all over the United
Wow.
States, where
Wow.
these incidents of, just basically lynchings of black soldiers. They got, white dudes getting mad because these guys are coming back, and now they've been in the military. They have these, additional skills that they have
Yes.
garnered from the military, right? And they're coming back, and they're officers, maybe lieutenants or whatever, in their uniforms. And so you have a situation where these unskilled laborers are looking at this and they're just not having it. And so you have just violence all over the country. Around that same time in Arkansas, you had the Elaine riots. This is in the Delta region of Arkansas is, I guess, northeastern Arkansas. So towards Memphis, if you look at a map. And that was driven again by employment issues. You had a bunch or a group of black tenant farmers and other, agricultural guys, and they were going to form a union or going to join a union. White folks not having it. And so there you
Yeah.
go. And closer to where I am now, I'm in North Carolina, and I'll just wrap with this. And this is actually something that's timely because it is being celebrated right now. This month, a series of events, which we're talking about the Wilmington Massacre or the Wilmington Coup. And the reason coup is key is because this particular event, which happened in 1898, is the only time that a successful overthrow of um, an elected government in the United States happened in Wilmington, North Carolina, in 1898. And what you have in that case is a little different than the other ones I mentioned because um, this is on the back or the aftermath of the fall of Reconstruction. You had a situation where black Republicans at the time, that was the Progressive Party, and the Democrats were basically the segregation party, if you will. And um, they had what they called a fusion party, which was a coalition of black Republicans and basically poor white folks. And these guys got together. Sounds familiar if you think about it. Sounds like Martin Luther King, People's Campaign. Uh, um, my man, his name's escaping me, up in Chicago, Fred Hampton. Same thing, bringing together poor whites and blacks because the interests are aligned. You follow me? And
Yes, absolutely.
these guys started winning elections all over North Carolina. Now, just so you understand, Raleigh is the capital of North Carolina now. But if you jump back to the slavery or post slavery, Wilmington, North Carolina is a port city. So it was actually the most important city in the state. It was the largest city in the state, and it was predominantly black. They called it the Black Mecca. Wilmington, North Carolina, y'all. I'm telling you. And so I didn't know anything about this. Like so much of this stuff, we weren't taught this in school. I only learned it almost by accident just because I live in the area. And so I will give Wilmington credit. They have embraced the history. And I know this month there are a series of various events. They have monuments that acknowledge this massacre that happened. And there are some studies that I have looked at, and I've written about this a couple of times, where Wilmington was almost 80% black. Today, 13% black, because what they did was going. This is going to sound so familiar, and I'll shut up because I can go on about this. But no, what happened in Wilmington was white Democrats decided the upcoming election in 1898, they were going to get rid of what they call Negro domination, because you had black police officers, the head of the customs authority in Wilmington, because it was a port city, was black, had a black newspaper, all this stuff. And they basically had what they called the White People's Rights Campaign. And the newspapers were printing all kind of propaganda. They've since apologized. I want to say it's like the Courier, one of the biggest newspapers in Wilmington, still exists. They've apologized. And so here's where it gets interesting.
The
They
damage
had
is
a
done.
paramilitary group called the Red Shirts, basically the Proud Boys before they were the Proud Boys. And they were going into the election. They were going around Wilmington, shooting in churches, shooting in people's homes in black areas. And so by the time the election rolled around, black folks scared to vote. And they won anyway. And these guys basically went to the mayor, put a gun to his head. He's a white guy, and told the newspaper guy, y'all got till sundown, get out of town or you're dead. And they took over the government. And the president at the time would not send the National Guard in to help, didn't do anything. The governor didn't do anything. And so, yeah, they overthrew the entire elected government of Wilmington, and white folks took over. So there. I know you didn't ask for all that, but I can get going. Sorry.
No. These things is good to know, okay? To see how far we've come. And
Mm.
so, with the union coming into place, we had to fight for that. And we have seen that has become a thing of the past, because like all of these plants now, they came in with right to work, and that means there's no union.
Well, the story with right to work. The original states that enacted. I mean, it's basically a replacement for enslavement. It is a mechanism to keep from paying people market wages, and the initial states that adopted that, the right to work laws, were former Confederacy states. So now it's expanded. And now, I think almost exclusively you find it in what we call red states or Republican run states. Because, we basically have a country whose um, organizing principle was based on the ability to have a sizable segment of the population working for free. Otherwise, America would never, I mean, that is what caused America to become a global power, is that its main export, which was cotton, basically was was raised for no money. I mean, they basically all that plantation owners had to do was buy the cotton. The people picking the cotton weren't even considered human, right? So
Yeah,
they were
exactly.
categorized just in the same way as a cattle rancher categorizes his steers and cows so they could borrow against their enslaved workers. They could insure these people. So if, one works and has a stroke and dies, they actually get reimbursed because they got insurance on that person. So yeah,
Okay.
it's hard. It's tough to really conceptualize how, because look, you and I, you see what we look like. We were not intended to be part of the equation. I mean, we can laugh about it a little bit now, but it's almost laughing to keep from crying, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they did us just like they do the cows. So, they give you the brand. So if you run away, oh, this one is ours.
Mm, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I just so I sing, roots, all of that, and
Oh
I'm like,
yeah.
oh my God, we should be so grateful. Okay.
I
We-
I think
Go
I
ahead.
think a lot of the anxiety that we see from many white people, and that they want to just sort of eliminate or erase. We don't talk about DEI. We don't want these history books. You can't be reading The Bluest Eye. You can't read, I Know Why the Cage Bird sings. I think a lot of that is driven by a fear that if we ever accumulated the kind of power that they have had by default, that we might do to them what was done to us, right?
That's guilt. That's guilt. Okay. Let's call it what it is. Okay. Um, yeah, so the thing of it is, we were not allowed to read anything. They didn't want us to have any knowledge to know anything to keep us where we are, to keep us in servitude. Okay. So then we find some things to read at night. We have to hide it. Okay. Because they find out, you know.
Hmm.
So
Someone just points out, just in the chat, that some of the most vicious overseers were Uncle Tom black men, and they reference Clarence Thomas. There's certainly something to that. I mean, well, just the entire mechanism um, was built around making us, convincing us that we had no value without them, right? And it's, it ties in with Christianity, and I'm not an expert on this stuff. I just read a lot about it, and I know some things because, as we were talking about before we went live, I grew up in Arkansas in the last years of Jim Crow. So I didn't go to school with white people until I was in junior high school. And
you
this
a
was
bust?
in, oh yeah, yeah. Um, Now, for a bit, I lived in Little Rock, and then I moved to a more rural town, and I could actually walk to school, but it was really like the biggest school in town, 600 kids, and it had just integrated all of the neighborhood schools into one big school. Um, but even then, and we're talking about 1970, I mean, we had color TV. It's not that long ago. And so, even then, after we integrated the town that I lived in, there were many just places that were still segregated. I remember there was like a segregated cleaners, like people who just would not do business with black folks. You walk in there and they look at you like, what do you want? Were you crazy? So
Well, okay, but you could walk in the front door, not the back door.
I, you just knew not to walk in because it was known that, oh yeah, there were two boys clubs. We're talking about Pine Bluff, Arkansas. I don't know if folks around
I heard
that,
of it.
it at the time was the second largest city. So Little Rock was the largest and Pine Bluff was second largest. And they had, it was because of military presence. There was the what they call the Pine Bluff Arsenal, and they did like all weapon stuff, like nerve gas and really dangerous stuff.
Right.
but they had two boys clubs, and when I first moved there, I thought one of them was referred to as the White Boys Club. I thought it was somebody's last name, because the other one had somebody's last name. No, it was the White Boys Club because it was for white boys. And we rolled up in there. My dad was thinking about filing a lawsuit, and so, we went into this place, and all our little classmates are playing ping pong, and they got really nice stuff, and got a basketball court, just like a boys club's supposed to have, right? And some little old kid just rolled up on my dad and told him, "Hey, you can't come in here." A child put us out.
Wow. What?
Yeah. Yes.
See?
Yes.
Racism is taught.
Well, I mean, so, and for the longest time that went on, someone else, actually a military officer that was associated with the arsenal, sued, and the people that ran that boys club made the decision because boys clubs get United Way money, or at least did at the time. So they were getting 90% of their funding from the United Way. So the courts ruled, look, if you're getting this money from the United Way, you can't be segregated. You know what they did? They said, fine, we won't
What?
take the money. We'll stay segregated. And they raised the
Whatever.
money. They raised the money, and the city, folks, citizens of Pine Bluff, kept that boys club segregated. They quit calling it a boys club, started calling it something else. And yeah, there you go.
It
America,
is what it is.
America.
Make make America great again. Okay.
So yeah, it's interesting history, and I can understand why maybe it's embarrassing to some people, but
This is the
fortunately,
world we live in.
yeah, fortunately, there are enough of us around that there's a good friend of mine on this platform, young man, Khalil Green, the Gen Z historian, and the name of his newsletter and his platform is History Can't Hide. It's one of my favorites because he's on top of it. He's a Yale grad, and I think he has on YouTube a streaming show, and he's just breaking down the history. So yeah, you can pull these books out of schools, but I think um, that just makes kids want to know what you're trying to hide from
Exactly. The forbidden fruit is the one that's the sweetest.
them.
Okay. Everybody know that.
Indeed.
So talk to us a little bit about colorism, because we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but look, we want to look at it from your perspective.
Oh boy. Hmm. We don't talk about that now. so so all I can tell you is again, growing up in Arkansas, you see these things. So, there were churches in Little Rock that they call them they call them blue vein churches, where, as I remember, because it was like if you like see you can't see these veins in my I could not go to that church, but there were churches, and I won't call any names. I'm sure they're not like that now, I don't think. But there were churches where you had to be at a minimum what they call paper sack brown. Okay. It's funny now, right? But I'm serious. Old folks, ooh, that girl, she got good hair. You had to have good hair, be at least paper sack brown, preferably high yellow. And so, in other words, look, the closer to white you look, the better your prospects were. Okay. And it's that simple. And this is just um I have had my grandmother, her father was biracial. My grandmother was born in 1898. Her father was half black, half white. So I'll let y'all figure that out. So she was one of three sisters and a brother. or two sisters and a brother. Her two sisters, if they walked in the room right now, you wouldn't really take them for black people because they had blue eyes. Well, genetics is funny, right? So they had blue eyes. She was darker, had straight hair, but she appeared more, if anything, um, maybe Indian or something, not exactly black. Um, but so you just, I mean, and they all moved up north. The ones, I mean, so I have cousins that do not look like me in any way. They don't appear to be black people. But of course they are because you got that one drop rule, right? And they got more than one drop. It's just the genetics when you start and you go back, well, why they look like this? Why does my grandmother have a biracial daddy? We're talking about slavery, most likely some rape involved, and so on. So
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah. So yeah, those are things that we don't really talk about as much. And I suspect a lot of it still um exists maybe in different ways. But you would see, I mean, and growing up, my dad would talk to us about this, mother too, just certain schools that black people, we're talking about HBCUs, pardon me, that favored the more um, black folks with a closer to a white appearance. I'm trying to be diplomatic. And, so that was something that was in throughout black culture, right? And you just assume the white looking black doctor, maybe he's supposed to be better because look at him. I mean, he must know something, right?
Yeah. It's like he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth.
Well, I mean, and these folks could pass. And so it's complicated.
Yeah, so person like me and you, I have to work 10 times harder. Okay?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, look, I today you still see it. I mean, and I think you probably, hmm, if you talk about the um, black hair care, black, products, makeup, these kind of things. I think maybe there's still some carryover in some of that. I look at some of the commercials I see, and I'm talking about now we're getting outside of just black culture. I look at commercials where, Fortune 500 businesses got a commercial on TV and it's a black guy that's blackety black, and the wife, you're like, is she black? And then the kids, and you're looking at this and you're just going, well, that kid can't be the product of this. And so they're messaging what they perceive to be beauty. They're
Beauty is in the eye of the
messaging,
beholder.
okay, but advertising, I mean, in terms of what is considered black beauty, there's certainly, even back in the day, Ebony magazine, well, you're seeing Lena Horne on the cover of Ebony, and so that is, and nothing against Lena Horne, she's a beautiful woman, or she was, but you see what I'm saying? You would not see for a long time a really black woman on the cover of even black magazines. You
Mm-mm.
just didn't. So, you know,
It is what it is. I remember, with the Academy Awards, what Mamie, she played the maid. She
oh yeah,
won
oh
a
yeah, Gone with the
supporting
Wind.
actress.
Gone with the Wind.
Yeah. Oh, I'm like, oh goodness. Okay, we
I'm
come a
trying to
long way.
recall her name and it's escaping me. I'm old, y'all. But yeah, she couldn't even come on stage and collect her Oscar. I mean, wow. It's bad enough the character she played was really just a stereotypical mammy, but she played it and won an Oscar. And
Okay.
yeah,
She set the tone for the rest
Hattie
of the
McDaniel. Thank you,
property.
Vantage Point. Thank you. Hattie McDaniel. I mean, that's a story. And I just read
Absolutely.
that who was it? Clark Gable. I mean, there was
Mhm.
actually a little bit of a thing because they weren't going to let her. Because I think that year the Academy Awards were in Georgia, and they weren't even going to allow Miss McDaniel in the venue. Okay. And so there was some, I guess what we might call rigmarole about about this because I'll have to dig that article up. I actually read something about that a while back. So,
Yeah.
American history is something else.
I used to didn't like history. I used to think it was boring, but that's the most magnificent subject of all because history will repeats
Ooh.
itself, and if we look back, we can see that.
Someone just mentioned imitation of life. Wow.
Oh yes, yes,
That's
I
that
love that.
that is so interesting. That movie for the time that it came out is really a shocker. I mean, that it just, whew, it's one of those movies. It's been on my short list because I'm somewhat of a cinephile. I love watching movies. I kind of like the gangster genre. I mean, you can see like my shirt is the Godfather. I really like gangster movies, but I also like good movies. And a lot of the really good movies happen to be old movies, and that's one that is just something because there's the sort of the crescendo of the story is the mother's funeral, and seem like Mahalia Jackson is singing at the funeral, and it's like, oh man, wow. So
And
yeah, it's something.
that's why I always say that I want my flowers while I live. She cried all those tears, but it wasn't genuine because she didn't love her mother at all.
Oh, I think
Okay,
it
she
was
didn't.
guilt because she knew what she had done to this woman. For those who don't know, so the and I won't spoil the movie, but essentially this woman was friends with a white family, and you correct me if I'm off on this. And her mother was very dark skinned, but she could pass as white, the daughter. And so the the friend's mother, like she became famous, actress or something, and she took these people along with her. And the mother, the black mother, basically was her best friend, but she was in the role of a maid. And the daughter just sort of disowned the mom because if that's her mom, then she can't be white, which is she's passing for white. And so this is a movie from what, the 50s? I mean, that
Perhaps.
someone was bold enough to tell that story at that time and not get censored is I would love to know the backstory. I don't know it, but it's so out of the norm in terms of the movies that were being made at the time. And it has I mean, it's held up. Imitation of life.
Yeah, that's why I always honor my mother and my father. You know what I'm saying? I
Mhm.
don't care. You're supposed to do that. I don't do that.
I will just to add on to that point. I often, it's easy with everything that's going on right now. Um, oh, it's easy to say, oh, I just give up and just really be depressed. And there's a lot to be upset about. But at the same time, I just think about my grandparents, my parents, like, marched. We were talking about imitation of life, Jackie. Um, my parents, I just got like a taste of Jim Crow. They lived it. They grew up in it. And I recall them marching on the weekends. They put on their best clothes and go march, get roughed up, and have to come home and act like it's all good. So, as bad as this is, Black folks, people of color in America, we've been dealing with stuff worse than this always. So that's why I won't say confident, but I'm hopeful that we can get past where we are right now.
How we do that? You want to tell us?
I don't have the answer. I just think, each of us has, um, we each have skills. We each have a thing that we are good at. Mine is, writing a little bit and running my mouth a lot. so, so each one of us, we all have tools that work for us. And I feel like as long as platforms like this are available, one of the things that platforms like this have done for all that's bad about them. And yeah, I know there's some Nazis on here. I know there's some straight up racists on here, but we're on here too. And I'm not going to leave this platform any more than I'm going to get run out of town where I live, where there are also white supremacists and folks that don't like me because of how I look, don't like my little family structure or whatever it may be. So we all have skills. This is mine. You have yours. People in the audience, everybody's got a thing that they do. And we just have to marshal those into an effort. And I'll give you an example. Look at the No Kings March. There's no who's the leader of No Kings. There's no one person that's the head of No Kings, right? And last I looked, 10 million folks got out in the street and they created momentum. And look what happened Tuesday. It's really, I used to hear people say, oh yeah, well, those folks got out there, but that don't mean they gonna vote. Well, I guess that's possibly true. However, from all indications, and I'm not saying it was just because of No Kings, but I would argue that that energy was a contributing factor to the wave that we saw on Tuesday. So people are getting up off of their couches. You got a guy in New York who just won an election that had more people turn out than back in the 60s, y'all. That's crazy. That is crazy. So think about that. We're talking about presidential elections, statewide elections. This was a mayoral race that, brought people out that had not been moved to vote. So to me, when you say, what do we do? That's kind of our weapon, and we just don't use it enough. And just as a person who's been around, like, um, the bus boycotts down in what was it, Birmingham, I guess. They didn't end because people just suddenly said, "Ooh, let's help these black people. Ooh, let's let them ride the bus." No, 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 no. That boycott ended for economic reasons because the bus companies were going broke because black folks said, "You know what? All right, we ain't gonna ride your bus. You don't want us on there." And that's why that came to an end. Look at Target more recently. Target showed out, and Target's having some problems right now. So that tells me that as people, we don't have to get out in the street fighting and tussling with folks. Stop spending your money with folks that don't do right. And I wrote, I write. This is the kind of thing I write about, and I wrap it in economic, facts. Okay. I wrote something a couple of months ago, and it's all about voting with your money. Vote with your money. And you don't even have to leave home to do that. Quit buying. Okay, Lynn, I'm trying. I like Spotify, but you're right. I was talking to someone on a live event the other day, and I meant somehow we got talking about Spotify, and Tidal is, that's the platform for musicians that I several artists are involved, Jay-Z and Beyonce and some others. But yeah, there's so many different places, And that's the thing. We've democratized information and access. But with that, we like Substack, we like Spotify, we like Amazon. It's convenient. But the people that run these platforms that make our lives so easy are doing bad things.
I wanted to mention also that yesterday it's the first time you turned Virginia from red to blue.
Yes. Um, I was not so surprised by Virginia because um, you can't fire the hundreds of thousands of government employees that this Doge, um, I don't even know what to call it. It's not a program, but they fired all these people where they live, Northern Virginia. So
And where are they
it's
going?
it is very it's crazy, but it also points to the arrogance of the administration and how it, the, the the majority of people did not vote for tearing down the White House. I think that's a safe bet.
We paying for that. We taxpayers
Listen,
paying for that, so they don't care.
well, and I'm really it's not something that makes a lot of political sense. Except maybe in a bigger except the fact that they told us this is what they were going to do in Project 2025. They want to make the government really not so much small, but loyal to them. So they get rid of all of the people that are just
Like
regular
me.
government workers. They get rid of all of those folks. They get rid of all the contractors, and they bring in people who forget if they're qualified or not, as long as they go
Loyalist.
along, right?
Loyalist.
Loyalists, exactly. And so, okay, that sounds great on paper, but a bunch of airline um, folks in the airline tower, that agree with you but don't know how to bring a plane down without a wreck. What good is that, right? So now they are faced with the fact that a lot of the things that they're trying to do, they don't have any qualified people to actually do the work because they
They
fired.
don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing.
No, they don't. They don't. Some
I think
somebody is in the chat saying they divorced Target and they're getting ready to divorce Spotify and Amazon. I never really thought about it in that way, but okay.
talk to us about what is Walmart going to do now that SNAP is eliminated. Or I heard something about they might do an
Oh,
injunction to
oh
put it
no.
back in because that's how they
Well,
was paying people. They pay
well,
people the lowest amount, and then they
yes.
supplement. They sell you to supplement it with SNAP.
Walmart has been doing that for some time, and it's really obscene. Now, I'm again from Arkansas, so Walmart is headquartered in Arkansas. The I mentioned in the beginning that I had worked for a firm for a number of years before I started my own firm. That firm is the investment bank that it's Arkansas based. At the time I worked there, they only had one location, and that firm was the largest investment banking firm not located on Wall Street. They took Walmart public 1969 or 70. So, I've always sort of been plugged into Walmart. In fact, when I was working in New York, Walmart does, or used to do what they call, you hear about, stock buybacks, companies buying back their own stock. I used to manage
Yes.
a program for Walmart where I would trade millions of shares of Walmart a day, on their behalf, buying back stock. Walmart, um, I believe, still is the nation's largest employer, second only to the government. Um, and they are responsible, just percentage wise, for an enormous amount of people that are on that are receiving SNAP benefits. So you walk into Walmart and you got an employee that's working their butt off, you know, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, and they can't afford to feed themselves. And they're also on SNAP because they don't make enough money. And in North Carolina, I have to tell you, to get SNAP benefits, you really are not making a lot of money. So the idea that a person with a job is still poor enough to collect SNAP benefits, that's just, again, it's just obscene. And I guess when you juxtapose that with the fact that the Walton family that owns the majority of Walmart, they control the company, even though it's public, is consistently ranked among the wealthiest people on the face of the earth. And their employees are among the poorest people in America, at least. EG says that it's robber baron capitalism. I'm going to suggest that it's worse because at least if we want to talk about robber barons, so that would be who? Vanderbilt, Carnegie, and some others. At least these people cared about their legacy. I mean, you got Vanderbilt University, so there's an endowment that was made or something. But we got some folks now that are more interested in building a rocket ship than making sure their employees can eat. Henry Ford, as anti-Semitic as he was enough of a businessman to say, well, shoot, I need to pay my employees enough money so they can afford to buy my cars that they are helping me build.
Duh.
We don't have that now. We got people who are working folks into the ground, and they are just interchangeable parts as far as these guys are concerned. And with AI, it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse.
Amazon and all these companies are laying people off, getting rid of people. They're replacing them with AI and these computers. Even the government's doing that. Well, in one way, you're going to save time. Okay, you're going to get much more productivity. The computer's not going to call in and say I'm sick. I can't come in. Whatever. I get it. As a business owner, I can't afford to pay nobody either. But I mean, you still have to figure out, happy medium because that impacts. It's a domino effect, and then it impacts the economy.
Margaret, there is a difference, I would say, between, let's just say, you and I. AI is very helpful to me because I depend on trying to be able to support. I always like my newsletter. I call it, analysis and opinion with receipts. So finding the receipts is, it takes a lot. You got to be on the internet just searching around. And so Chat GPT, I can say, here's what I'm looking for, find it. Or tell me if I'm wrong. That is very different than if I were worth $1 billion or $100 billion and people are working for me and they can't afford to take care of themselves. And I mean, could I not, instead of 100 billion, maybe take, I don't know, 50 million and throw that other 50 back at the people that work for me? I see. So it's a real perverse way of capitalism, and you can like capitalism or not, but American capitalism is just a really cancerous and dangerous beast right now.
That's why I told people, if that job is killing you, quit. Because them people don't give a damn about you. At the end of the day, you alone. Okay. Soon as you drop dead, they done put somebody
got
else
a new
in
one.
place.
I was talking to my wife just like yesterday, This is something that bothers me, and this is from 15 years ago. I was running a trading desk. I was handling the stock buyback for Microsoft. It was a client of mine, and we had a vacation planned, and you never would know when they would want to do it, right? And so you just so you understand, on some days I would be pretty much like I would be the largest concentration of volume in Microsoft. So I might be buying in a day 5 million shares of a stock that only trades 35 or 40 million shares in a day. And I'm 5 million of it. And they're paying me. So I don't know, maybe we're making 1 cent a share. You do the math. It's not insignificant money for the firm. So I had a vacation plan, and the day before we are supposed to leave, and we had rented like a little RV kind of van or something, and we are going to drive down to Arkansas and see some folks. And the day before, I get the call, hey, tomorrow we're coming in with, this, we want you to buy stock for us. Well, I had other traders that conceivably could do it, but my boss said, he tell me not to leave. He said, are you sure you want to be gone when that happens? And I fell for it. I was like, I canceled my vacation. Well, we can go later. We can go later. You know what? That was 15 years ago. We ain't been on that vacation yet. So you can't really replace some of these things. And we have been convinced, America's done a really good job of convincing us to equate our worth with productivity, right? And
Right.
what's the first thing when you meet somebody new? What do you ask them? What do you do? And that's how we equate the value of that, even if we're not maybe consciously doing it, but that's the thing. So, we have to unlearn all these things. The
Exactly.
quickest way to do it is try to start a newsletter and turn it into something that pays the rent.
Yes, exactly. That's where we are today. So, political decisions drive economy reality. Is that a fair statement?
Political decisions, um, they can. I would say right now, the political decisions that are being made are driving the economy into the ground. When you look at these tariffs, y'all,
Let's talk about that. Let's talk
oh
about it.
boy,
Yes.
it's probably the most ignorant thing I've ever seen anybody do. I don't, I don't
Why?
understand it.
Why would somebody want to do that?
He's
Manipulate the market?
Well, there's certainly a lot of that going on. I mean, there are other ways to do it. I mean, he's also manipulating the cryptocurrency market, but nobody is going out of business because of it. This is just, there's just some people you can't convince them that they don't know what they're talking about. And you look at guys like the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. Well, this guy knows better. Okay. Mhm. I'll just, and I know you probably are ready to close, but I would just say this: yesterday, they were in front of the Supreme Court, the lawyers for the Trump administration. Mm. And, the Supreme Court is about to rule probably by the end of the year, before the holidays, I would guess, because it's on an expedited schedule. And so the subject is, or the topic is, whether the president can even do what he's doing with tariffs. Um, it appears to be illegal, but that ain't never stopped him. So I listened to it. I mean, the arguments, different attorneys making their arguments, And the Supreme Court, I mean, and the Supreme Court, we can't depend on them for a lot, but they were just kind of like, this don't make no this don't make no sense, right? Because and here's where I think they screwed up. They meaning Trump. For months, they have been saying that tariffs the revenue from tariffs are going to help offset the cost of this big bill that they passed. They have been talking about how these tariffs are generating, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars in income for the government. And the Supreme Court said, well, that's a tax. Okay. And now so Trump's people were in court trying to argue that this was just regulation. It wasn't a tax. But the problem that they have now is they are on record as saying this is money that the government is raising that is going into the government coffers. Well, that, ladies and
Sound like
gentlemen,
money
is a
laundering.
tax. So they're having a problem. And I suspect, you know, it looks like Neil Gorsuch, Amy Coney Barrett, at least, are not really buying what they're selling. And of course, the three liberals are not. So that's the game. And John Roberts will probably, I mean, he has argued this exact thing previously. So I can't imagine him going against his own mate. They do it, but so it appears to me that they're going to rule against Trump. And then we just have to figure out now, it's a mess. How do we, what are they going to do? Give all these
How you
billions
gonna
of
clean it
dollars
up?
back? I mean, who knows? I agree,
I don't
Marco,
know.
not Rubio. Anyway, that's where I will leave it.
So, does anybody have any questions for Marlon? Oh, Jackie said, like Marianne Williamson said, quoting someone else, this is just bomb time, a time bomb. Time,
Oh,
oh,
that it is a time bomb.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
They created this monster and they have to
I'll
figure it
just
out.
I'll
They're going
throw
to have to
one
work.
more thing in. Tomorrow is the first Friday of the month.
Okay.
Tomorrow, on the first Friday of the month, every month since going as far as I can tell, that is when the Bureau of Labor Statistics announces, I think they call it the employment situation report. We call it the unemployment or the jobs number. We're not going to get that tomorrow because the government is closed. I believe it is the first time this has happened since the Bureau of Labor Statistics began releasing economic reports to the public. First time. One other thing, and I know you got to wrap up. Today, we surpassed 1 million job layoffs. 1 million for the first time since the pandemic. Who was president during the pandemic? Oh, same guy. I sense a pattern.
The
Yeah,
same one is going to send
same
out
guy.
the same one going to send out stimulus checks, and then he's going to charge you interest on the money he supposedly gave you. And when he send that check, I'm going to send it back to him.
Two
I
things.
don't want it.
I see someone says that it may be one of the reasons. I have actually thought about that. That
What's that?
the reason one of the reasons they're not rushing to open this government back up is because we have no idea how bad the economy is right now. We have no data. We have these other outside groups that collect data, but no one has the breadth and the manpower to collect economic data like the BLS does. Second thing I see here, you got some smart people in your chat. I mean, now this one person says they think the Supreme Court's going to side with Trump. I I really
I do
don't.
too.
I listen to them now. They could totally do an about face, but man, they really convinced me, at least two of the conservatives. Now, Alito, he was just grabbing at straws. I didn't even hear Clarence Thomas say anything. So I figured, where they're going. But Alito,
You know,
um, Amy Coney Barrett, especially, John Roberts, the first words out of his mouth when they opened was tariffs are a tax. And if it's a tax, it's the government raising money from the citizens. So this goes back to the Constitution. What did we have the Revolutionary War over? Taxation without representation. It goes all the way back. So these guys are supposed to be, what do they call themselves? Originalists or textualists. And they were talking about this. Like, this is like foundational to the United States. So how can you come in here and tell us this isn't a tax? And the key is, who has the authority to tax the American people? Not the president, the Congress. That's their job. So look, they can do what they want to do. It is one of the few times that I actually believe they are not going to go with Trump on this, because it's just anathema to everything that they believe in. So we'll see. I hope I'm right, because I would love to see what they're going to do next after that.
okay. Does anybody have any questions for Marlon? It's been a very good conversation.
I appreciate you inviting me.
I appreciate you accepting my invitation.
Somebody asked where I was in North Carolina. I would just say I am about 25 or 30 miles north of Wilmington, on an island, in the hinterlands.
You guys got anything else for Marlon? It's been truly a pleasure, Marlon, having you here today. I want to thank you.
I really
so
enjoyed
much.
it. I really enjoyed
Yes,
it.
I did too. Thank you all, and you take care, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, thank you so much.
Sure.
Bye-bye.